Detroit Pistons select Luke Kennard from Duke University.
Bang! Samaje Christian, 3.
Welcome, everybody. Another episode, Triple Double Podcast, presented by TripleDoubleProspects.com. My name's Corey Albertson. Also have Jason Moore of 270 Hoops here. Want to remind everybody listening, if you want to send in a question to the podcast to answer on the air, send that to TDP Corey. Corey spelled Corey. TDP Corey at gmail.com. Our guest today, Coach Ricardo Hill. Ricardo has been the head basketball coach at Walnut Hills since 2012. He's won a whole bunch of games, some league titles, made a Division I state semifinal appearance, and Ricardo is also the creator of the Cincy Lakers AAU program and is active across Cincinnati, Dayton, in the community with helping kids from his program and other programs to find exposure on the college level. Ricardo, what's going on, man?
What's up, big fella?
Man,
pleasure being with you, bro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, you know, the first episodes of this thing have been just smoke and mirrors, and I've just been waiting to have you on so we can build our Lakers team and, you know, try and keep building our Lakers program, man. So first and foremost, I just want to say to everybody listening, I appreciate, you know, you taking me in on the family for the last couple of years and doing events at Walnut in terms of our open gyms and everything has been a blessing. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for that, man. And also right back at you, because what you do for the kids down, especially in Southern Ohio, but also in the whole state, giving them that platform where the collegiate coaches can see the talent that we have in Ohio. That just speaks volumes, man. So I appreciate you as well, bro.
Well, great. You know, we've had some AAU guys on, we've had some high school guys on, and, you know, we're going to talk about a little bit of both today. There's some similarities to the way you run your program to the way that Sonny Johnson at Garfield Heights runs his program. There's some similarities to the way you do the AAU thing with Corey Tucker from Ohio that we just talked to. That podcast will come out Tuesday. And Andy Kendrick from Pocket City, the way they do their program. So we're going to hit on some similar things, but, you know, first and foremost, man, all the old heads in Cincinnati or Dayton, you know, they come at me, they tell me, man, you should have seen Ricardo in his teenage years. You know, he was a good player, but, you know, that dude was crazy. So just talk to us about, you know, your kind of career, your kind of charisma, and, you know, how you started off, you know, from Evanston and everything and made it to become, you know, a really successful college player.
Right. Thanks, man. When you know, I didn't know anything about AAU when I was coming up. It was more just playing neighborhood basketball, really. And I had 7 older brothers that I would try to play with them on the playground when they go play and playing at the parks, and pretty much taught myself how to play. And the first team I got on, the coach, he told me he kept me because he thought my mom was going to be cute, because I had curly hair. So, and then I became a pretty good player for it. But that was my first coach. I'll never forget him. He actually came to a couple of games at Walnut Hills this past season. But we didn't have, I didn't know anything about AAU. I just kind of, you know, learned from the older guys, and then played basketball at Cape High School, and went on to play at Western Kentucky for a year after high school, and then transferred to Ashland University and became an All-American there. And when I moved back to Cincinnati and started having my kids, and I wanted to teach my son the game because I was such a big fan of basketball. And what it did for me, I came out of college with no loans and with a degree. So I took him to a basketball tryout, and it was so bad. And I'm like, man, I'm going to have to coach him. And so I started coaching, and then a few years later, like 7 years old, I put a team together, all football players, and we called them the Cincinnati Lakers. And then when they were 8, we went and I had them traveling and playing at AAU tournaments, and we ended up winning a few big tournaments, and we just grew from that experience.
And I mean, some of those early teams you had with Ricardo Jr. and whatnot, so many great players that have come through Cincinnati, ran with the Lakers, ran with that team. I mean, I think with that class, you had all the good players at some point or another, but your personality is one that's very in your face, run your mouth a little bit, have some toughness, some heart to you, and all the kids that you had that same personality. That's why that team was good.
Yeah. We had, and I'm a firm believer of your team is going to reflect your coach. Should anyway. If you really get to know them, they get to know you. So I definitely was one of those guys where everyone told me that, hey, you can't play D1, or you should stick with baseball or whatever. And I was one of those guys always trying to prove somebody wrong, and just had that tenacity in myself. And I love coaching those type of guys. So yeah, we got those guys when they were so young, man. They never played basketball, and we kind of taught them how to play that way, where you just play hard, aggressive, in your face. And it was crazy just to see how those kids developed over the years, man, and then went on to play college basketball. It blows my mind.
One of the guys who really has had success along with you, but he's retired from it now on local AAU in Cincinnati, is Orlando Berry, who had those Purple Knights teams and became all high purple. And I remember he used to always tell me, I'd be trying to put a team together in Orlando, would be like, man, you're wasting your time. You need to go get you some fourth graders, build the team then. That's the only. He said that's the only way you can win, because he said his kids, when they got older, they were so ingrained into what he wanted them to do that it became synonymous with winning and everything. But so we just had Tuck on, and we talked about AAU on the Nike circuit level, and there's obviously a lot of advantages to it, and with the Cincinnati Lakers, as much blood, sweat, and tears as you put into it, it's a great program, but there's some disadvantages and just resources and opportunities, and we haven't had an opportunity to have all that glamour, but when you look at it, so many kids have been touched by it. So, how have you done that, and how have you kind of explained to those kids that, you've got to be even hungrier to be successful, being that you don't have the same opportunities as some of these other kids. You have to take advantage of them when they come.
Right. And like the state of Ohio is just it's crazy in AAU, where it's just so much hating goes on in AAU in Ohio. I mean, it's a shame that you only have a few teams that had the opportunity to get into the EYBL. That's crazy, because there's enough kids, and there's enough talent that you can have multiple teams in, just like a couple other states. And the same for the gauntlet. But I mean, it is what it is. Those guys, they do what they do and claim what they claim. But we love competing against them, and we go up and we try to get the guys that want to play for us, that want to play college basketball, and put them on that platform. And that's the ultimate goal, is to give our guys a chance to be seen. And I think with the way we built our reputation with the collegiate coaches, that they're going to come watch our kids regardless of who's on our team, because we have that reputation. So we tell our guys that, hey, you got to lace them up and play your butts off every single game. You cannot take a play off. and just go at those guys and have that chip on your shoulder. And that's what we kind of built our program around.
And I mean, that's the type of guys that we've always wanted because, I'm a believer in, in the AAU thing with, if you've got the resources to get a bunch of gear from a shoe company, that's awesome. Obviously, I would take advantage of that. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you're making your AAU decision off of the uniforms and the shoes and all that, that's not what we want. Those aren't the kids we're going to be successful with, because if it's a kid who's going to say, well, our team's small, we don't have enough size to compete. That's not the type of kid we're going to be successful with. It's the kids who don't care, but they're just going to get out there and battle. Those are the guys. I mean, your son played college basketball, got a free education. Now he's going to law school. And, when he came out of high school, Ricardo Jr. was, 5'9", 160? Right. I mean, never cared if he was going against a guy 6'3", 200. And I mean, those are the type of kids that the college coaches definitely think of with the Lakers. And, that's exactly what it is. And then, you talked, I think you started to brush on it, but, what are some of the advantages of having a local AAU team? I mean, to me, the advantages are practice time. The advantages are chemistry, kids who've known each other for years, deeper family relationships. And I mean, just kind of talk about how you've used that to your favor.
Right. And I think another advantage for us is we're able to build a bond and trust with the players because we get to know them more than just as a AAU basketball player. So when those colleges call us, we can really tell them like, hey, he is a good kid, or this kid is a little rough around the edges, but I would take a chance on him if I was you. So we really get to know those guys. I mean, it's easy if you're getting automatic D1 players. You got a roster full of them, and then it's funny to me because I crack up when I see these guys tweeting or putting stuff out on social media. All of my kids went to college. Like, dude, you give everybody free everything. Like, you get all the best players. Of course, all of them going to college. But the joy for us is to get those kids the looks that no one really knows about. I remember when we had a couple of players that, like Chris Mack, he was at Xavier, and he was recruiting a couple of players that was on the other team that we played against. And he came to the game to watch them. And after the game, he's calling me about our players. Like, hey, and Isaiah Johnson gave Maverick Morgan like 36 points, and they were recruiting Maverick Morgan. Well, they switched that and started recruiting Isaiah Johnson. So those are the opportunities that we give our kids, and they got to take advantage of them when it happens. But being in our program, that's what's going to happen.
Right, and I mean that's kind of what you've been known for. Guys like Ozzie Davis in Cincinnati. I think guys like Sonny Johnson in Cleveland. Lucius Jones is one in Columbus, where you're really trying to help a lot of kids, and you gotta look at degrees of winning. And one of those degrees of winning, like you said, is if you got a kid who's got unbelievable high major ability, he's going to play at that level in 2018. There's so much exposure opportunities available. It's not hard for him to find something. But for when I coached with the Profits, we had kids who were homeless. We had kids who came from very, very difficult situations. And for some of those kids, for them to use AAU to become a better player, to stay out of trouble, to stay eligible for high school basketball, and then they go on to play junior college basketball, that's just as much of a win, if not more of a win, than sending a kid to a high major Division I program. And you did that. You've done that with the Lakers. You've done that with helping other kids who maybe haven't played for the Lakers. And I mean, I think that's something very admirable. And one of the reasons why for you, it's very easy to pick up the phone and call a lot of the inner city Cincinnati or Dayton coaches and tell them, hey, I want this kid to play for the Lakers because they're going to trust that, if that kid doesn't go to Division I, he's not just going to be, well, it wasn't sexy to work for him, so I'm just going to kind of let him fall to the wayside.
Right. And a lot of coaches, like even the high school coaches, a lot of them sometimes they're a little reluctant to send them to the Lakers because they think we're gonna try to recruit them to Walnut Hills. And I can sense that sometimes. But for the ones that really want to do right by their kids, when they send them to our program, those kids are getting looks, and that's what we're about. We're trying to help kids, period. And I tell everyone that. And even if the kid doesn't play for us, and that kid needs to get some looks, they'll call, and I'll get their material and send them to different colleges that I have relationships with and have them take a look at them.
Right. I mean,
so it's about helping these kids.
I can tell anybody listening right now that there's a kid in Cincinnati that you spent more time in the last 2 weeks calling schools for it as an unsigned senior than anybody in his camp that, was associated with his school. So, no, that's certainly appreciated. Well, let's move on past AAU, let's kind of do a segue here. So coming from AAU, you certainly had in your coaching days when your son was playing, you had that reputation of being a wild man. One of my favorite Ricardo stories ever is Teontae Robertson was living with me at the time, and he had an early morning game, like 9 a.m. game, and somebody picked him up and took him, and somebody brought him back to my house, and I think I was up late the night before. I think I was still asleep when he got back, and he woke me up, and he says, "Cord, man, we won our game." And I was like, "Oh, that's good, Teontae." I'm like, how'd you play? Did you guys play hard? And he goes, "Man, we played so hard defensively." He's like, "Coach Ricardo didn't even have to break a chair or tear his shirt or nothing." I'm like, that's how crazy Ricardo is. So, well, I say that to say this. You're the coach at Walnut Hills High School. Now, Walnut Hills High School is, over the years in my time, when I played high school basketball, I came out in 2007, wasn't very good in basketball, had a little talent, and you really build it to where there's a lot more talent, a lot more emphasis on winning basketball games. But, when you got the job, everyone was like, well, why the hell did Walnut Hills hire this this street guy, this AAU guy? Right. I mean, talk about kind of starting that experience off, going to the Final Four your first year, and just kind of the hate you took and then how you really embraced it.
Right. And one thing about me is I know that I have my priorities right. And my priorities have always been to try to help kids. So when the so-called naysayers or hate, or even some still do it, that never really bothers me. It may bother the people around me more than it bothers me because I know what my purpose is. But I definitely had to tone it down. So from my younger AAU days, but coming into a school like Walnut, I knew that, but I knew that I was still going to be myself. So yeah, I'm going to fight for my kids. I'm going to make sure that they're not getting taken advantage of. And then they're going to play hard as hell. And every single possession, if you're going to beat us, that's cool, but you're going to work your tail off to beat us. And that's how we built the program. We built our trust. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because when after we went state that first year, a couple alumni guys that knew me through AAU basketball approached me at one of our alumni functions, and Walnut has an incredible alumni foundation, and so this guy is an older white guy. He comes up to me and he's like, "Yeah, I followed you through AAU, And I was not happy when you got the Walnut job. I'm a Walnut grad, and I just was not happy. And he's like, but I'm going to tip my hat to you because I'm your biggest fan now. And to this day, that dude comes to all of our games, and he's like, I just didn't know you. And I told him back then, when people form their opinions about someone and they don't really know them, that's wrong. And that never, ever affects me. Like, I don't care about that. Like,
but I mean, they don't understand. They don't understand it. I think in the AAU, I noticed for a fact, you did some of the things you did them for a reason. And if we look at, these are two kids, who I know extremely well, who've stayed with me before, have worked out with me. You look at Teontae Robertson, you look at Devin Williams that played for West Virginia, plays in Australia now. They didn't have dad at home. So if you had to get on Devin, if you had to get on Teontae, you weren't just doing it for basketball. And maybe that's what people don't understand, where when you go to Walnut Hills, you've got a lot more two-parent home kids. You got a lot of families who are super, super into education, where, maybe they're, in the AAU level, that wasn't the case. So, share a story with me on Devin. I remember you told me that when you first got Devin playing for you, however young he was, that you would tell him an exact time to wait outside for you. How'd that go?
Man, so Devin was always a bigger kid, and he was. I remember him playing on the Cincinnati Knights team, and we were playing at Sports Plus, and we were playing on one court. They were playing on the court next to us, but our benches were back to back, and there wasn't a curtain down, so he can hear me out. And I'm just going off on our players about playing hard and playing with your heart and blah, blah, blah. And Devin, I look up, and he's just staring at me from the bench. He's on the end of the other team's bench. And so I look at him. I'm like, pay attention to your game, son. And he says, I want to play for you. and so that's how I met Devin. That was the first words that we said to each other. And so anyway, later on, he ended up quitting that team and joined our team. And we immediately played him. I mean, he went from being on a team that wasn't really as good to being on the best team in the state and starting right away. And he wasn't even playing on the other team. So anyway, I gave him, Devin, you had to pick him up to come to practice. And we were practicing at Walnut Hills Academy in One Terrace, and Devin lived in Northside. So I go down to pick up Devin. If we had practice, say at 6 o'clock, I'll tell Devin, hey, I'm going to pick you up at 5:27. I'll give him an odd time. And I'm telling you, I'm like, listen, you got to be outside on your porch. And 5:27, if you're not out there, I'm leaving. And so we did that. It was some struggle at first or whatever. So anyway, we got the AAU state championship weekend. It's the day before it starts. It's a Thursday. We play on Friday. It's 8th grade year. And so I go pick up Devin, and I go pick him up, and 5:27, and Devin's not out there. So I take off. Well, here I look in my rear view. I see Devin running behind my car. Coach, screaming, Coach, Coach, Coach. He's running down the street, and I see him, but he was late. So I went on. I didn't stop. I just kept going. I went on to practice. I go in. I tell the team, I said, hey, Devin was late. I'm coming out, so he's not here, so we're going to do it without him. And so we're practicing or whatever. And, man, about 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the practice, here comes Devin walking in. And I'm like, how'd you get here, man? And he says, I walked. And I'm like, man, I love this kid. And it was just Devin's work ethic, man. And we always knew. I knew from that moment, I'm like, Devin's going to make it, man. He's going to make it. I remember I saw John Stovall and Jerry Watson. They were talking at an event, and Devin's in 8th grade. I'm like, hey, Devin Williams, high major. And both of them started laughing. And look, Devin ended up at West Virginia, and an opportunity to play a little bit over Australia and getting some invites to play some NBA camps. But I remember they laughed when I said he was high major back then.
Well, Devin's a great example of an inner city kid who comes from a difficult situation. Had some violence in his life with some older brothers who had some problems, and Devin, more so than any kid his age, understood that basketball is the way out, and if this doesn't work out, I have a realistic opportunity of ending up in the same life that they ended up, and I don't want that. And that's a very mature thing to do, and a lot of kids talk that theme, but they don't really mean it, and he really meant it. And that's why I'm proud of that kid. And speaking of stories from the early days, I think Jason has one he wants to talk to you about real quick. I think you'll like this one.
What's up, Jason?
What's up, man? Well, there was one, I believe this must have been 2013 or 14. It was at the Boyd County Roundball Classic. You were playing Huntington Prep, and it's still the only time to this day I can remember a coach yelling at another coach down the bench because Huntington Prep was playing zone, and you weren't happy with it.
Right. Oh, man, so, the year before we played them when they had Andrew Wiggins, and we really, really should have beat them. They beat us by, they ended up beating us, I think, by 6 or 7. But we really had an opportunity to beat those guys. And so we were coming in that game. I mean, I thought we had, they had talent, obviously, with all the high major players. And we had, DJ Winfield and Isaiah and Jordan Tyson, who were all legitimate D1 prospects at the time, really. Anyway, so that year, we thought we can compete with them. The next year, we had Maceo Teague. He was a junior. And that was really our only D1 player that we had. And Maceo at the time was in between. Some guys had him low major, mid major. Nobody had him high major. Well, they had, of course, some high major players. So we're playing, and they're playing a 2-3 zone, and we take the lead early. And so we're winning, and they're playing 2-3. And so I'm like, all right, Maceo got the ball. I'm like, Maceo, pull it out. So he pulls it out, and the Rob Fofer, he's down the other bench, and he looks like, you're not going to play? You scared to play us? I'm like, you scared to come out and play man to man? You got all these D1 players, bro. Come play man. So that's how that happened. It was hilarious. And so I kept going there every time Maceo scored. I'm like, all them D1 players, and you don't have one player that can guard this kid. It was pretty funny. He was mad. Oh, my God, that dude was mad. But it was pretty funny, man. It was all good, though.
That's your personality for sure, man. Well, let's switch gears here one more time. The last thing I want to really talk about is, we've talked so much about some of the problems with basketball in Cincinnati, being that the inability of adults to get along, some of the kind of the hating culture, and how it's really held our kids back. And then at the same time, like any inner city, though, I think it's a little worse here with the culture of basketball, and that our kids are certainly have had problems getting in their own way with getting in trouble or not focused on academics or whatnot. So, just tell everybody, who's listening, what you did with creating basketball at Ohio Midwestern College, and just kind of what that experience was like, and compared to an opportunity for kids who didn't have other opportunities.
Right. Okay. So with that Ohio Midwestern program, it was based off of Temple Baptist Church, which obviously a Christian school, and so they wanted to build a college. They always had a college, but it was super, super small. So they wanted to try to build it through athletics, and they brought myself in for the basketball side of it. And so they had already had a team, and they used to get throttled. Like they were in a league with UC Claremont, and Claremont would win the league every single year, beat them by like 50 points. So anyway, so the first year I went out, and it's so many kids, and especially in the inner city schools, that have some talent but don't have anyone pulling for them to try to give them opportunity to go somewhere. A lot of these kids can play junior college basketball or NAIA, where they can play somewhere, but they don't have anyone to push for them. And so I walk in, the first two guys I walked in, their school, it was Western Hills. And Brandon Smith, who was about 6'5", and stocky kid, and the end of the bench at Western Hills. And then they had Josh Chancellor, who was 6'8", played center, transferred from Woodward to Western Hills, and both of them didn't have anywhere to go. Both of them pretty athletic, pretty decent guys. So I go over there and I get those guys, and I'm like, hey, told them what we're doing, and both of them like, yeah, we're there. So I got those two, and I got Kenny Knight and Nick McCoy from Aiken, and a few other guys, Kadeem Palmer from Taft and Marquez Johnson from Taft. So I got all these kids that all of them were rough around the edges. All of them
Super
had chips
rough
on their shoulder. All of them had chips on their shoulders. And I go from coaching, the average ACT score at Walnut Hills is 27. And the average at OMW, at Ohio Midwestern, was 14. So I'm having 2 practices a day, and it was, man, that wore me out. But so we get in our league play, and all these kids are freshmen, and we get in the league, and we end up winning it. And the whole entire league, those kids are too old. I'm like, what? We were getting emails, our AD was, and the president, that our kids are too old, that they were pro players before. It was hilarious. I'm like, these dudes just graduated high school, bro. But anyway, it gave those kids an opportunity to play college basketball and start getting their education. And a lot of those kids didn't get it. They didn't understand it. They thought like AAU, where they don't have to go to school, they just can play ball. And some of them got it, and some of them didn't. Some of the kids went on.
You helped so many kids there, and I mean, it's hard when you have those type of kids, because one of the things I always say to people about junior college basketball is the biggest struggle in junior college basketball to me is you take a lot of kids who haven't done particularly well academically for the most part, and you put them all together, and you got a lot of like-minded think, and then things can go awry from there. And you certainly had a lot of that. I remember, I was still doing Cincy Prep Hoops Report. I certainly at that time, I was very early, focused probably 75-80% of my coverage on inner city Cincinnati basketball. So I knew every kid on your team.
I remember that story.
23 years old. On a personal level, I knew every kid on that team. And I remember going to your practice and thinking like, damn, this team might get in a fight every game, but if they ever make it through a game without getting ejected, they got some talent. And that goes really back to what you said, though, is you had a lot of kids who I remember you had a kid on your team, Gene Premise, and Gene was a hell of a good kid. He's got a great heart. Comes from a background of he's got some guys in his family who've gone to the street route. Right. And we're in Orlando the summer before, and I was like, Gino, what are you thinking about colleges? I was like, I know you need some work academically, but what are you thinking about college for next year, man? And he goes, Corey, what are you talking about? He goes I don't want to play. He goes, I don't want to go to college. He's like, I'm just going to play I play in the little Devereaux League. He's like, I got to do what I got to do to get this money, and that's what I'm going to do. And I mean, you took a lot of those kids though, and I mean, you gave them at least a building block to start having a life. And,
right.
a lot of those kids now are, and, you're always going to have, you're not going to have 100% success rate. It's impossible. But you have a lot of those kids who've gone on to have, careers and things that are other than basketball, other than, the streets. And I mean, that's something you should be extremely proud of.
Right. I appreciate that. Yeah, man. And Gene, oh my God, man. Gene, and what a lot of people don't understand with that, you hit the nail right on it, man. That kid, and he got into some trouble. He was playing basketball. He gets into some trouble, and so I go down to court, to the court of law, not the basketball court, and and he was in front of a judge, and the judge was scolding him or whatever, and nobody was there for that kid. Nobody. And so I kind of raised my hand and said, "Can I say something?" And he let me. And I spoke up for that kid, and they gave that kid another chance. And that judge told him, like, the only reason was because that man came down here and talked for you, son. And Gene, man, he really, really appreciated that, and to this day, always showed me much love and respect, man. And I really was pulling for him, man, because he had some ways about him, but that kid, man, he had so much potential that people didn't see. They only saw thuggish. But that kid, man, he could be a leader somewhere.
But those kids, those kids, it's just about taking baby steps, and those are the kids. Like, right. I know nowadays, if I run into a kid like that, and I'm trying to coach in AAU, my old move would be to try and talk to the kid. My new move in 2018 would be I'm gonna call Gene, or I'm gonna call. There's plenty of other ones, and I'm gonna have Gene up. So Gene, call this kid for me. I want you to tell him who you are, where you came from, where you went away from what you should have done, and what you're doing now. And I mean, those are the type of guys that can really convince the kids, like, no, here's the best way to really be successful. And that's one of the great things about kids like Gene. And they got a good heart, but the problem is that when they were 17 years old, 18 years old, they didn't understand that they were afraid to take the leap.
Right. And those kids, I mean, like Gene, that era, those were some tough kids, man. And nowadays, everyone's just so cuddled and soft. And I remember one of my last teams at Ohio Midwestern. I told them, I said, "Hey, I'm gonna take you guys and we're gonna play a prison team in prison," because they were all talking all tough. And when I said that, the room got totally quiet. I'm like, "What's wrong, y'all cool?" And all of them, man, we had the best practices leading up to this game, right? Like, totally focused. I'm like, wow, I think they really scared to go to prison to play these dudes. I'm like, yo, ain't no fouls in prison, man. Ain't no prison fouls. I don't know what type of refs they go at.
That's one of the problems with Cincinnati basketball right now, as you drilled it, is, there's less emphasis on basketball. There's more emphasis on being cool. The smoking weed thing, I think, is only getting worse. And to me, I could deal with a kid like a Gene, like several other kids you had on that team that I had in AAU with the Lakers, the Prophets, or the Phenoms, where if there was a kid that wanted to play basketball bad enough, he could figure out how to survive academically. He could figure out how to survive in his personal life to the point that basketball wouldn't get taken away, and you could always hold basketball over his head. Some of these kids now, don't care. They don't care about it enough. It's not important enough to them, and that's fine if that's not your motivation. But you also limit some of your opportunities.
But don't say you want to play D1 basketball.
Right, and a lot of guys fool themselves. Exactly.
Right.
So,
that's crazy.
That's cool.
But that's how it is, man. We had that kid, and you used to love that kid also, Nick McCoy, man. Wow. I remember Nick, and one of my favorite stories about him. So we had Greg Howard, one time. We went to 2 national championships in the Christian college division, right? So one game we have, we're down 1 in the whole school. That we playing them in the championship game. Greg Howard has like 43 points. Nick has the ball. It's under 10 seconds. And Nick has the rock, and Greg is screaming, Nick, Nick, Nick. Greg is open. Nick tries to go to the hole and win the game and lose the ball. We end up losing. And Nick was just beating himself up, man. And it's like he made the all tournament team, and they're calling his name to come out to the center court, and Nick won't go out there. I'm not going, man. I don't want that play. I blew the game, man. I blew the game. And I'm trying to be cool in front of the crowd, like, Nick, go get your plaque, man. Go get your plaque, Nick. Then finally, I'm like, Nick, go get the plaque. So Nick goes out. He takes the picture. Oh, my God, I got to find the picture, Corey, because everyone on that all-tournament team are smiling and holding their plaques up. Nick got his plaque almost behind his back, has a frown on him. He gets in the locker room, and long story short, we go off on him, man. And, but Nick was one of those players, man, that we tried to save and that had some talent. I mean, crazy talent, but just didn't have that foundation where a male in his life that can lead him in the right direction. So those are the kids that we get. And we just trying to save them, my man.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Well, that's great, man. We certainly got to cover a lot of topics, hit some of the things I wanted to hit. So, that was great again. I appreciate what you've done for me, allowing me to be a part of the program, helping, try and do the same thing I do with help a lot of the kids get exposure, and at the same time, convey to the kids what it takes to make the next level. And now you and me gotta focus, put our heads together, and get ready to do this thing in July, brother.
Hey, man, July, I'm just letting you know I'm going to have a camera on you the entire every tournament, yo. Last July was hilarious.
It makes me so mad when people are like, man, Corey with the Lakers acts crazy. And I'm like, have you guys seen Ricardo? I'm like, Corey is the calm one. So, but you could have that opinion. Just let you act up one day and see if I'll have my damn camera out. But no,
all
so
right, man, I appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, let's wrap it up real quick. That was the Triple Double podcast. We had Ricardo Hill from the Cincy Lakers AAU organization, as well as Walnut Hills High School in Cincinnati. My name's Corey Albertson. Jason Moore, our producer's with us again. Thanks for listening, guys.